Hey, it's Mr. Shrum, and I wanted to recommend two books today because of Earth Day. And the first is A Short History of Progress by Ronald Wright. I uh, went over this in another video that I'm going to upload today, and it explains this book. This is a historical anthropological book looking at the progress of humanity and both the good and bad. Progress can be medicine that can help us treat injuries and disease, and progress can look like the atom bomb, which allows us to murder thousands of people in seconds. And I argue that's not good progress, and progress for progress's sake is not inherently good. And this takes a look at where we came from, where we are, and what should we do? Where are we going? And looking at the um, past civilizations that have collapsed and how to avoid that in the future, because we are heading toward an ecological disaster, and that can mean very bad things for humans and the rest of the earth and other earth dwellers. Now that's nonfiction, and a good book that pairs nicely is this one called Ishmael, a novel. And it's by Daniel Quinn. It is a ecological fiction, maybe eco-fiction, part philosophy, and it's a conversation largely between two people, a teacher called Ishmael and a nameless everyman type of character. And they have these conversations. And the book earned a Turner Tomorrow Fellowship for the best work of fiction, offering positive solutions to global problems. And the author, Daniel Quinn, parses humanity's origins and its relationship with nature in search of an answer to this challenging question: how can we save the world from ourselves? And the book starts out with this guy. He's kind of cynical. He's kind of been around the block a few times. He has done some spiritual searching, talked to um, gurus and teachers of such, and they claim to know the meaning of life and how to live the best life and what to do with one's life. And it turns out he didn't really vibe with any of them, and they didn't really scratch an itch that needs to be scratched. And he finds this ad in a newspaper, and it looks like this: teacher seeks pupil, must have an earnest desire to save the world, apply in person. That's it. It was just a 3-line ad in the personal section, but it launched the adventure of a lifetime for this man. And he says, okay, I just got to check it out to see if this is not just another charlatan that is lying about knowing the meaning of life and what to do. So he follows the address, and he goes to the address, and it's an empty office building. It looks a little creepy. No one's been there for a while. And he enters. And is this really where a teacher teaches the meaning of life and what to do? And he walks through the empty hall, slowly creeping towards this big room with a giant pane of glass. And behind that glass is a gorilla, just a big gorilla. And it turns out he can talk, right? Sounds weird, but stay with me. He can talk, and his name's Ishmael. And it turns out he is the teacher seeking a pupil. And the guy, the main character, is, taken aback. He's like, why am I in this empty office building with a gorilla? And he finds out the gorilla can talk. He learns about his history, and then they have this conversation. I'll skip to this conversation, just to give you a flavor of the way the book's written and the themes that it focuses on. So here we go. Can you guys read that? Okay. There are times when having too much to say can be as dumbfounding as having too little. I can think of no way to respond adequately or gracefully to such a tale. Finally, I asked a question that seemed no more or less inane than the dozens of others that occurred to me. And have you had many pupils? I've had 4 and failed with all 4. Oh, why did you fail? He closed his eyes to think for a moment. I have failed because I underestimated the difficulty of what I was trying to teach, and because I didn't understand the minds of my pupils well enough. I see, I said. And what do you teach? Ishmael selected a fresh branch from a pile at his right, examined it briefly, and then began to nibble at it, gazing languidly into my eyes. At last he said, on the basis of my history, what subject would you say I was best qualified to teach? I blinked and told him I didn't know. Of course you do. My subject is captivity. Captivity. That's correct. I sat there for a minute, then I said, I'm trying to figure out what this has to do with saving the world. Ishmael thought for a moment. Among the people of your culture, which want to destroy the world, which want to destroy it, as far as I know, no one specifically wants to destroy the world. And yet, do you destroy it, each of you? Each of you contributes daily to the destruction of the world? Yes, that's so. Why don't you stop? I shrugged. Frankly, we don't know how. You're captives of a civilizational system that more or less compels you to go on destroying the world in order to live? Yeah, that's the way it seems. So you are captives, and you have made a captive of the world itself. That's what's at stake, isn't it? Your captivity and the captivity of the world. Yes, that's so. I've just never thought of it that way. And you yourself are a captive in a personal way, are you not? How so? Ishmael smiled, revealing a great mass of ivory-colored teeth. I hadn't known he could until then. I said, I have an impression of being a captive, but I can't explain why I have this impression. A few years ago, you must have been a child at the time, so you may not remember it. Many young people of this country had the same impression. They made an ingenuous and disorganized effort to escape from captivity, but ultimately failed because they were unable to find the bars of the cage. If you can't discover what's keeping you in, the will to get out soon becomes confused and ineffectual. Yes, that's the sense I have of it. Ishmael nodded. But again, how does this relate to saving the world? The world is not going to survive very much longer as humanity's captive. Does that need explication? No, at least not to me. I think there are many among you who would be glad to release the world from captivity. I agree. What prevents them from doing this? I don't know. This is what prevents them. They're unable to find the bars of the cage. Yes, I said, I see. Then what do we do next? Ishmael smiled again. Since I have told you a story that explains how I came to be here, perhaps you will do the same. What do you mean? I mean, perhaps you will tell me a story that explains how you come to be here. I said, give me a moment. You may have any number of moments, he replied gravely. And that's just one section of the book. And it tells a story and it challenges certain beliefs that we tell ourselves. And it focuses on culture and the stories we tell ourselves. And the stories we tell ourselves have an impact on the way we exist in this world. And he talks about how different cultures have different impacts on the world. He separates them into 2 groups, the leavers and the takers. And leavers are seen as more sustainable, right? They take what they need and then they leave the rest for the other animals and the other plants in the ecosystem. Takers, on the other hand, take, and they lead to more advanced civilizations, sure. However, they need more and more resources, and they take and they take. And that is an unsustainable way to live. And if you choose to read this book, it goes on to talk about what stories we currently cling to and how they may not be as true as we think they are, and the various myths in our history are myths, right? They're not true. And it even goes into some of the biblical themes and analyzes that as well. Cain and Abel, the struggle between hunter gatherers, the more uh, uh, nomadic hunter gatherer type of people, and the Neolithic farmers, and how farming allows you to control your food source, and that increases the population, and yet that also increases the need for more and more food. So in a weird way, you control your food source, and yet you need more and more food. And I think this pairs very nicely with a short history of progress. So you get the historical analysis here, and then you get a really cool philosophical take on humans and how they can change their ways, or what are the changes that need to take place. What is the most sustainable way to live? Was it in the past, the Stone Age, where these hunter-gatherers, they lived a very long time in certain ways, and yet once we grew into these large civilizations, we're putting such a strain on the earth, and we are going against the laws of nature to some degree. We are destroying competition, and that can have a very disastrous effect on ecology, the environment, and the planet as a whole. But if that interested you at all, I think you guys should check these books out. And happy Earth Day. And if you have any questions, be sure to email me or message me on Canvas, and I can suggest more stuff to you too. But until next time, have a good one, guys, and see you guys later. Bye-bye.